Part 2. When Loyalty Learned to Choose Sides, 1899 to 1908. By the turn of the century, the Austro-Hungarian Empire still looked intact on maps, but on the ground it had begun to creak. The cracks were not loud or dramatic. They appeared in offices, in paperwork, in the way rules were applied differently depending on who stood in front of a desk. Elias Morgenstern turned 16 in the autumn of 1899, and with age came a strange privilege. People began speaking freely around him, assuming youth meant harmlessness. At the railway station, notices were now printed only in German and Hungarian. No law announced the change, no decree explained it. Other languages were not forbidden, they were simply ignored. Elias watched Czech conductors struggle to understand new regulations, Serbian porters stop asking questions altogether, and travelers from the provinces stare at documents as if they were written in code. Exclusion, he learned, did not need violence to be effective, it only needed indifference. Jakob noticed Elias listening more than speaking. One evening, walking home along the river, his father warned him that truth had become dangerous currency. Silence, Jakob said, was no longer neutral. In 1901, Jakob was reassigned closer to Vienna, not as a reward but as a precaution. He was efficient, multilingual, and politically invisible, qualities the bureaucracy valued in unstable times. The new city was larger, cleaner, and sharper in its hierarchy. The station itself reflected power: officers behind glass, clerks at raised desks, laborers herded through side entrances. Elias enrolled in a secondary school where history was taught as certainty. Empires were described as natural stabilizers, nationalism as childish impatience, and America as an uncultured marketplace pretending to be a nation. Elias copied the lessons faithfully, then watched the streets contradict them daily. Equality existed in textbooks, ranking ruled reality. His classmates tested him constantly. They asked what he was, which side he belonged to, which language he would choose if forced. Elias had no answer that satisfied them or himself. In 1903, news of the assassination of King Alexander I of Serbia reached the city. Official reactions were swift and rehearsed: condemnation, warnings, calls for order. Unofficial reactions were quieter and more revealing. Among Slavic communities, Elias sensed restrained approval, not joy but relief. People spoke carefully, listened closely, and avoided paper trails. Jakob told Elias that predictable loyalty was the empire's oxygen, and unpredictable hope its greatest fear. That same year, Elias began working as an informal interpreter for imperial clerks, overwhelmed by petitions, testimonies, and complaints written in languages the administration no longer wished to understand. He translated appeals for local schools, explanations from farmers accused of sedition, and grievances from workers punished for speaking their native tongues. He learned that translation was never neutral. Once a clerk asked him to soften a farmer's words. Elias refused. Accuracy, he said, was his only job. He was dismissed for several weeks and learned how easily principle could be penalized without official punishment. Across the Atlantic, America continued to appear in letters and newspapers as both warning and promise. Elias read about factories and strikes, exploitation and opportunity, violence and reinvention. The United States did not hide its contradictions. Europe did, and called the disguise tradition. In 1905, revolution in Russia sent tremors through every imperial capital. Strikes, mutinies, and massacres were discussed in whispers. Surveillance intensified. The word security appeared everywhere, justifying delays, arrests, and censorship. At cafes near the station, Elias met students who argued late into the night about reform, independence, and socialism. They asked him what he wanted. Elias answered that he wanted words to mean the same thing regardless of who spoke them. They laughed, assuming irony. Jakob's health failed in the winter of 1907. Years of stress and smoke reduced him quickly. Elias took over his duties unofficially, keeping schedules running while authority pretended not to notice. One night, Jakob grasped his wrist and told him that empires collapse slowly and then all at once, and that when the moment came, Elias should not stand where he was expected. Jakob died in early 1908, quietly, without ceremony worthy of record. At the funeral, officials spoke of duty and service. Elias heard only absence. Walking back to the station with his father's notebook hidden inside his coat, Elias understood that loyalty was no longer inherited. It was chosen, measured, and soon it would be demanded. The trains still ran on time, but the destinations were beginning to change.